Hello, another podcast episode. And I wanted to talk about, actually, if you remember, I did a podcast episode about art and accuracy. Well, I would like to talk about film and accuracy because what I notice, me included, raising the hand, me included on this, uh, what we tend to do is we watch these movies that are based on actual events and a lot of these movies, they're making a lot more. It seems like it anyway. And what tends to happen is we as humans watch these movies a lot and we take that as fact instead of the actual fact. And like me in particular, I mean, I watched Newsies for years and I think I said this in the Real Newsy Strike of 1899 video that I did. And of course, in the small town that I live in, we didn't have any books or anything, and of course the internet was brand new. By the time I graduated high school, it was only 6 years old. There really wasn't anything. You have to remember that YouTube didn't exist. There were no cat videos. I know. It was none of those animal videos or anything like that. It wasn't. And so I always thought that Jack Kelly led the strike because that's what I saw. I still don't understand why Kenny Ortega went that direction. I don't get it. I mean, why? Why not just have the guy who actually led the strike lead the strike in the movie? I don't know. He had his reasons and whatever. But that's one of those examples. Um, but one of the things when I was gathering up tidbits for this uh, particular podcast was one of my favorite more recent gangster movies is Public Enemies with Johnny Depp and Christian Bale. And I was checking for the historical accuracy segment, and uh, the biographer for it mentioned that he was impressed with the director because the director, Michael Mann, was a stickler for historical accuracy. And he even says, yes, there is a fictionalization in this movie, including some to the timeline, but that's Hollywood. If it was 100% accurate, you would call it a documentary. And unfortunately, there are documentaries lately that like to inject opinions more than fact. Oh, good Lord. But that's a whole other thing right there. But he's right. I mean, anything that is from Hollywood, I mean, I've said it before, and the Newsies fan base will say it, that Newsies is painfully inaccurate. Jack Kelly didn't. And he didn't lead the strike. It was Kid Blink. But for the longest time, I was just sure that uh it was Jack Kelly. And for some reason, fans were being told that Jack Kelly didn't exist, but there's newspaper clippings talking about a Jack Kelly. So there was a newsboy named Jack Kelly. And but let's talk about Newsies since we're on this subject. Because I've noticed with the fans when I talk to them, and we'll start talking about like scenes that interest us or characters and everything, and we start going off on everything. There's an absolute rage toward Pulitzer. Nothing about Hearst. Now, I know that they know that the the Newsies went after Hearst as well. It wasn't just Pulitzer, it was Pulitzer and Hearst. Uh, Even in the movie. because in the song World War No, The World Will Know, I shouldn't talk fast, but I do. And I trip up on my words. It's not dyslexia this time. No, but in the song, he says Pulitzer and Hearst, they think they got it. So he mentions it there. And then The World Will Know, the journal too. And uh, now I'm going by the movie because I don't know the Broadway show. So you're just gonna have to sorry to the Broadway fans. And but then there's also the scene where Pulitzer says, "Well, steal the headline writers from Hearst." And yeah, so there is mention of Hearst. We just don't see an actual Hearst, at least in the movie. I don't know about the Broadway show. But because there's the visual of Pulitzer, we see the villain, Pulitzer. That's why all the rage goes there. And but I have to break this apart for for my fellow fans. You can be mad at me. I don't care anymore. I've been blacklisted before, but that was years ago. I can be blacklisted again. I got thick skin. Um, the thing is that again, with the painful inaccuracies of Newsies, Pulitzer is not accurately portrayed. Look, Robert Duvall is a wonderful actor. And again, I don't know who portrays him in the Broadway show, but I'm sure he's fantastic as a stage actor. But the point is that in 1899, he's blind, he's deaf. The noise sensitivity was so bad that he was sitting in a noise sensitive room. His son Ralph took over the business. In fact, he took over the business like in 1898 or 1897 because his dad just was a shell of a man, basically. But Pulitzer would come to the office, but his employees would help him around, as would Ralph. And which you get to thinking about it, and there's a scene in, I swear to God, I'm telling the entire movie on this channel. I don't mean to, but there's a scene where you see Pulitzer with sights, and there's another gentleman named Jonathan. Well, honestly, who the hell is Jonathan? Why didn't they say Ralph? If, because the fans praise Kenny Ortega for making this movie so accurate, but it's not. And yes, Robert Duvall looks like Pulitzer and everything, and he plays an eccentric well, and he does the noise sensitivity thing when it needs to happen during that scene. But that, but in 1899, Seitz was actually reporting in 1899, Seitz was actually reporting to Ralph. See, I didn't even fit those pieces together when I did the 1899 uh video, the Real Strike of 1899 video. It was Ralph he was sending those messages to about the strike. It wasn't Pulitzer, because Pulitzer was just too sick to do it. But again, it's the visual. You see this actor playing this villain, and so he's getting all the backlash. So now Pulitzer's dead. He's not going to hurt anybody anymore. But and quite honestly, Hearst was was the real villain. I'm kind of surprised that Disney decided to choose Pulitzer over Hearst, considering how much an asshole Hearst was. I mean, if you were to actually look at Hearst's life, first of all, just the little bit that I talked about with Hearst, I mean, he was a spoiled rich brat. He took over his dad's newspaper business, which is not uncommon. I mean, a lot of young people would take over the business once their dad died or, their parents died or whatever. And Bruce Ismay did the same thing. And then all of a sudden, he took all of his mom's money. His mom's a widow. He takes over he takes all of her money to open the journal. And so he's using everybody, walking all over everybody. There was an actress, later on, like in the and there was an actor, what was her name? Marion Davis. Now he's married and he starts up this affair with Marion Davis and nearly destroys her acting career. And just, oh my gosh. Yeah, the guy was a dick. And so, but and just the things that he did, like I talked about it in that video where he had released all those articles about the ship the Maine, when the Maine mysteriously blew up, and he just decided that it was Spain. So America was ready to go after Spain. And remember the Maine down with Spain and all of that. There was zero proof that Spain did it, but everybody was gonna yeah. Rage on Hearst for a while. But again, uh, you know, it's because you see Pulitzer that uh the rage is there on Pulitzer. And uh Newsies fans are not the only one. Please don't hate me. Because let me continue. Just like well, just like with Titanic fans. Now, let me start with The Unsinkable Molly Brown. Okay, you have the Broadway show and you have the movie that stars Debbie Reynolds. And you watch the movie and you think that the actual Molly Brown had a happily ever after. Everything was good. Everything was hearts and roses. No. In fact, there's a couple of documentaries, there's probably more, but and a lot of times they will interview the family members, the surviving uh relatives. And I think it's a niece that's Molly Brown. And she said, unfortunately, this movie has everyone believing that she lived this luxurious, wonderful life after the sinking of the Titanic. She says that's absolutely not true. Uh she separated from her husband, nothing like the movie. Separated from her husband. She spent money irresponsibly, and when her husband died and the rest of the family came to figure out the estate and all of that, found out that she had just basically, they looked at it and they're like, there should be more money here. What the hell happened? Now, she didn't die penniless, but she didn't have a lot of money to her name by the time she died because she was just so irresponsible with money. And just because she was known as the unsinkable, yeah, she's famous now, but in her day, she had 15 minutes of fame. That's it. A lot of those people, e- even though uh, people were just as captivated by that tragedy, even in 1912, quite honestly, the survivors just wanted to be left alone. And so and and just move on. Especially after the from what I read while doing all that research and everything, after the two inquiries, they really just wanted to be left alone. And yeah, it was traumatic stuff. And so there's that to consider. You know, you watch the movie, you watch the show, and you think, oh, everything went fantastic for her. It didn't. It really did not. I was kind of surprised. Again, that's another one where uh I thought one way. You would think because she had that title, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, and no. And I'm kind of annoyed because you have someone like Violet Jessup. She also had a title called Miss Unsinkable because of the uh being on the three ships. And you would think that she would be a little more famous, but she's not. Everybody goes directly to Molly Brown. And now the other thing about uh, Titanic is, look, Titanic has a bunch of, but yes, I do hate the 97 movie. I can't stand, but I have my own reasons. Well, I don't really hate it. Let's backtrack on that. I don't really hate it. I just, because I appreciate well, I already did the video on that. It's not one that I would watch over and over again. And I know that people love it and everything, so. But now the thing is that I know that there are fans that try really hard to push the idea that Rose and Jack existed, and they are doing everything. Okay, Rose DeWitt Bukater and Jack Dawson are characters that James Cameron made. Okay, they're from his mind. Okay, this is called historical fiction. You take an actual event that happened. Look, every single Titanic movie that has ever been made since 1912, okay, except for the one where I think her name was Dorothy Gibson. She was a survivor on the Titanic, and her uh, agent made her make this movie. In fact, I did a critique for that one and the German film. Um, and those are the only two Titanic films that I've done so far. I mean, they were making Titanic movies right after they found out about them. And that poor girl had a breakdown soon after. Well, that movie is gone because of a studio fire. And the premise of the story was basically her account of what happened. But most of them are about love affairs that happen on the Titanic. And I'm sure that there were dozens of them. I mean, the terrible one with Tim Curry and Catherine Zeta-Jones that was released. It was a TV uh miniseries when miniseries were like the thing back in back when I was in high school. And I mean, it was bad. It was just awful. But that was another one that was about a love affair that happened on the Titanic. And this is just another one. The 1997 movie is just about a love affair that happened. They knew each other for 3 days. And I mean, if we were to actually look at all these different uh Titanic movies, it's the same premise. And all these different books that are written, it's just, I mean, it's kind of a romantic, thrilling idea, but it's the same thing every time. There's nothing new. It's absolutely nothing new. And am I saying to hate the movie? Absolutely not. Love what you want to. But there was a passenger named Rose, but it's not Rose DeWitt Bukater. Absolutely not. James Cameron was he used a lot of the survivor accounts when he did this movie. And I would think that if Rose DeWitt Bukater actually existed, he would actually put her in the cabin that she was in. Because I remember there was that whole thing, historians actually called him out because that character was put in a cabin that belonged to one of the first class passengers. I don't remember if it was like Bruce Ismay's or somebody else. So yeah, that just proves right there that Rose didn't exist. Now I do know that there was a passenger named Rose, but it seems like her last name is Cuthbert or something like that. And I don't think she's a first class passenger. Now, as for the headstone that says J. Dawson, it's James Dawson, and he was a cook's assistant. And yes, I'm well aware of that one. You know something, when they make these movies, they want you to love the movie. They want you to love the characters, you know, the director, the writer, the actors. They want you to love these characters. But there's a thing called historical fiction. But, I get it. I get why the Titanic fans try so hard to make Jack and Rose actually be part of the Titanic legacy. As as a fan of Gladiator, I would love more than anything for Maximus to be real, but he's not. Because I get the struggle. I get the struggle because and I made a podcast about the 20th anniversary of Gladiator. And even after I redid that podcast, I went back and I did a little more research, and yeah, sad face. It's just I will keep searching. Because that would just be so cool for that particular uh kind of person to be a real thing. Um, the idea of a soldier turn slave, turn gladiator, go up against emperor. But the thing about it is that the ancient Romans, not even just the ancient Romans, I mean like the Greeks and the Egyptians and everyone in the known world at that time would be documenting that. Uh, so because the Romans were documenting about gladiators from other places as well, and talking about their heroic feats in the Colosseum. And but Commodus is real. He got a more dignified death in the movie than the actual Commodus. Marcus Aurelius died from plague, and Lucius and Lucilla are real, and everything. But Maximus, he's just not real. It makes me very sad. So yeah, I get the struggle that the Titanic fans have, they so badly want Jack and Rose to be real, and they're really pushing it. But there's a thing called historical fiction, and taking a time in history and inserting your original characters into that time. Well, Maximus is an original character. He wasn't an actual person in history. So these actual uh, people from history are mingling with uh, somebody that was made up. Like just like my book, uh, Catherine and Enrique, they weren't on the Titanic. They weren't around in 1912. That's the whole thing about it. And I know, spoiler on that one. And I mean, we come to love these movies, and it starts to grow on us that it's accurate. Another example would be The Untouchables. This isn't one of those where it's a fictionalization of actual event. It's just pure fiction. I've seen that movie and I've tried to, you know, these are based on actual events. The whole thing is just full-blown fiction. There's a TV series from the 50s that was The Untouchables. And actually, the person that made that TV series got in a lot of trouble from the Capone family because of how soon it had been since the actual events. And so, yeah, the Capone family went after him and was like, "Excuse me." For what reason or another. Yeah, Capone was gone by that point, if I remember correctly. And the Untouchables movie does does the full blown, I mean, there's like probably 3% of it that's accurate. Look, and this is the other thing that happens is that people will talk about how they are enthusiasts of something. So like I'm a gangster enthusiast, I'm a Titanic enthusiast, I'm a New York history enthusiast, or whatever comes up. But then you get to watching these movies and you will accept whatever it is that you see. Well, if you're a gangster enthusiast and you think that that's what happened to Nitty, come on. Look, Elliot Ness was an amazing detective, but he was obsessed with finding Capone. And unfortunately, he became an alcoholic as a result. And so there's quite a bit in his book that you have to take with a grain of salt. And so it just um there's that to consider. And yeah, no, Nitty uh died of suicide. He was not killed by aliens. Yeah. So again, I'm not saying by any means to not like the Untouchables. Not at all. Because actually, even with the fact that it's so painfully inaccurate, look, again, Newsies is painfully inaccurate, and I still love it to pieces. It is so badly inaccurate, but I love it. Yeah, the guys don't dance in the street. I know, I was so sad when I found that out. But I mean, Untouchables has a cult following, and I'm not about to go up against them. All I'm saying is just be aware that it's inaccurate because there are some people that take that as fact. No, Nitty didn't. I think the funniest though is when I think it was Netflix. When Netflix did uh their series on Bonnie and Clyde, and they got ripped to pieces. Now, Bonnie and Clyde is one of those. I go back and forth on that on them on this channel, and of course, the movie with Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty is again one of those that's painfully inaccurate. And in fact, Warren Beatty says romanticized. These killers were romanticized by Hollywood. And but Netflix did a series on that. I think that was back in 2014. 2014 or 2015, somewhere in there. And people were just not having it. I mean, they got the hair color wrong, they got this wrong. And I gotta be honest, the whole thing about Clyde Barrow being raped in uh in in jail, that's a theory. Okay, that has never been proven. That is not fact. Okay. So and I don't like when these movies put something in there like that just for the sake of doing it. Yeah. I uh, I don't like that. There was no reason to put that in there. And and there were people that were mad about it. They were absolutely pissed at the idea because there's no proof. I mean, none of his gang later said anything about it. And and the people that were defending it's like, well, yeah, he when he came out, he was acting weird and funny, and it's like, yeah, he just got out of prison. Do I need to fit these pieces together? Oh my gosh. The fact that you are defending Netflix of all things. Bad choices. Oh my gosh. Oh, um, just the things that people latch on to, with these historical figures. And a lot of, just like the king that was in jail or, imprisoned, and he had a red hot poker. Uh, he was killed by having a red hot poker shoved up his ass. And that didn't happen. It just that theory came up like 200 years after he died. So some nut job just all of a sudden decided to throw in that there. It's so funny how people don't fit these together and they just run with it. And just like I mean, you'll say that that is fact. You will stand by that to high heaven and argue it to pieces, not actually using the internet and actually tracking down. It's just 5 minutes on Google, actually tracking down the, you know, the timeline with that and realizing, yeah. And, but you want Amadeus to be remade because it's not accurate. Well, everybody knows he wasn't murdered. Yeah, spoiler alert, sorry. And for those of you that haven't seen it, and there are people that don't want to see it because they hear that it's inaccurate. So I don't see how that's much of a spoiler. And look, Amadeus is a masterpiece. I talked about it in another video, and it does not need to be remade. I don't know why you have to. I won't see the movie unless it's has actors and actresses that I know. The movie's already made. Why do you need to shell out thousands and billions of dollars to make a movie? I don't get it. You're wasting money. Anyway, the thing about Amadeus is, and I talked about this in the video that I made way back when, is that it's based off of a rumor 40 years after Mozart died. The gentleman that made the play, wrote the play and everything, he was going off of a rumor. This is not new. Remember the era of internet death hoaxes? Macaulay Culkin has even says, "Gosh, how many times have I been killed off by the internet?" And I remember when the internet said that John Bon Jovi died, and he made a joke out of it. He posted a picture where he said, well, if I'm dead, then this is heaven, and he had been visiting his hometown. So I mean, so a rumor had been going around that Mozart had actually been killed. It had been like 40 years after he died, somewhere around in there. 30, 40 years after he died, and people were spreading this rumor. And so he decided that he was going to use that for his play. Did he believe it? We'll never know. Well, it made good entertainment. You can't fault the dude. I mean, we're still watching the play. We're watching the movie. It was turned into a movie and everything. I mean, good heavens. And of course, Schaefer, who he put in his own little elements to the play back in the 80s. Well, I think it was more the 70s and everything, but whenever he revived it and everything, it does not need to be remade because when people are still pulling this crap, yeah, it's it's based off gossip. And so, just bury the hatchet. Well, not bury the hatchet, just bury it on that one. You don't need to remake it. It's a masterpiece. Look, eh, for the most part, it's accurate. Yeah, Mozart was a genius. He played around on his wife and he got sick. And but he wasn't poisoned and everything. And the people around him didn't like it. I mean, but yeah, there were people. I have no doubt that there were people around him who were absolutely jealous of him. Not everyone thought that he was like the greatest musician ever. You know. But anyway, yeah. So there's a fictionalization there. Real person fictionalization fictional events for the most part. And but then you have something like Velvet Goldmine. I see this movie placed next to movies like Bohemian Rhapsody and Amadeus and Rocket Man and a lot of those other movies that are based on actual musicians. And for the life of me, I don't know why. Yeah, the glam rock era happened, but the, the the movie is totally fictitious. Again, Brian Slade was not real. John Rhys Meyers' character was not real. Inspired by David Bowie, but Brian Slade was not an actual. No, there was never this person named Brian Slade during the glamour. If so, it's totally coincidental. An amazing movie, saw it in the theater. Nobody prepared me for that part. Oh, I have to explain this now. Okay, so my friends knew that I had a big crush on Christian Bale, and they told me about Velvet Goldmine. They're like, you have to see it. So I went and I saw it at the theater, and I was watching it, and all of a sudden this scene pops up, and and like my parents are extremely Christian, hardcore Christian and everything. And I was like, I can't let them know that I saw this movie because I'm gonna get a lecture of a lifetime. So I actually tore up my movie ticket, and because I knew that they went into my room and to find out everything that I did. And, I mean, because usually I keep my movie tickets, and that was one that I didn't keep because I just didn't want to deal with it. And yeah, it traumatized me so much that I have the movie. And but but again, I mean, it's one of those historical fiction moments where glam rock happened, but the characters in the movie not real. Ben-Hur is another one. And I've actually had people believe that Ben-Hur was an actual individual, but no, he was not a real individual. The I actually have the book, Ben-Hur. The book was written by Lew Wallace. He was a soldier in the Civil War, and he wrote other books, but Ben-Hur was his bestseller. And yeah, Ben-Hur is another one that it would be great if he were an actual person. That'd be so cool if he were an actual hero in history, but no, he's not. And I mean, the book, my friend said he likes the book. He likes the story. He likes everything about it. And he says, yeah, the book is a dry read, and he was not kidding. I was like, I think I'll stick to the movie because you read the chariot race, and I mean, you're better off just watching it. And no disrespect to Lew Wallace, because again, this was during he wrote it in the 1800s, in like the 18 I don't remember when this was written, but anyway, so it was even before Hollywood even existed. Yeah, think about that for a second. So so all respect to him, but I mean, and then when they actually have the chariot race, I mean, it is epic. It's one of the best in cinema history. It's like I think it's in the top 10 and um and I don't think I could choose which one is my favorite. 'Cause I kind of lean towards Ramon Navarro's version uh as a whole movie. I like his version a little bit better. But when it comes to the chariot race, I don't know which one is my favorite. I grew up watching the Charlton Heston version, but when I watched Ramon Navarro's for the channel, um, I've been watching that a little bit more. So, but yeah, Ben-Hur is a is a fictional character placed in an actual time, in ancient times. And so, I mean, again, it's just we connect with these characters, and that's what the writers and the directors and the creators of these characters want us to do. We become emotionally attached. And in fact, oh gosh, uh there was a an American Justice that I watched, and it had this woman who actually believed herself to be Scarlett O'Hara. She was from the South, and she actually believed herself to be Scarlett O'Hara. She had read Gone with the Wind, she had seen the movie, and so she would try to get herself out of situations by acting that way. And that's overkill. Scarlett O'Hara isn't real. Okay, Rhett Butler isn't real. Now, I like the movie. The book is boring as ever. If you like the book, that's totally fine. I just had a hard time reading it and everything. The funny thing about it with Gone with the Wind, again, this is one of those where it's set in actual times. These characters are fiction and everything. But the funny thing about Gone with the Wind is that we know people like this. We know someone like Scarlett. We know someone like Rhett. We know people who have this disconnected relationship. We know someone like Melanie, who is just the sweetest person on the face of the earth, who can't see bad about anybody. And everybody, and I love I love Hattie McDaniel's part. She, she doesn't take crap from anybody. I absolutely love her part. I always have. And we know someone like that. We really do. It's like, don't you dare backtalk me, or else you're gonna get it. Absolutely love it. And I think that's why uh so many people love this story. I mean, to be honest, it's just a Southern romance story set in during Civil War time. I mean, the South is burning, and she's saying, "I will never go hungry again." That's her whole thing. She's singing about herself again. It's like, damn it, Scarlett. Oh my gosh. But they aren't real. These characters are not real. They're set in, and but this is human nature. It really is. You know, there's actually two villains in Newsies, but we only see one. And that's where all our rage goes after. And quite honestly, Pulitzer isn't even portrayed the right way. Actually, his son was in 1899 was the one who took over the business. So we should be mad at Ralph. The Untouchables is not accurate at all. And Nitty didn't die from, wasn't killed by Ness or anything. And again, I'm not telling you to dislike these movies because they're painfully inaccurate. Not at all. Continue to love the things, but I'm doing is pointing out the fact that we as human beings tend to uh disregard the accuracy and take what we see as fact. Hell, I did. I mean, I thought that Jack Kelly was the leader for the longest time because that's what I saw. I'm a disgrace to this movie. And and even uh when Molly Brown's descendant, the I don't know how many, I think it was like a great great grandniece or a great grandniece. Either way, she was saying that there are so many people who believe that because of the movie and the Broadway show, they believe that Molly Brown had this wonderful happily ever after life. And that's just not what happened. you know, and I mean, I could continue to go on forever and ever. I mean, just like Apollo 13, the fight in the capsule never happened. Absolutely never happened. In fact, when I was watching an interview, the actual astronaut said that they were really mad at Ron Howard for putting that. He says, all we wanted to do was get home, and we knew we had to work together. So the idea of that argument being placed in there, he said, we didn't care if it was for dramatic effect and to get the audience sympathy and all of that. He says, we really did not care. We thought that it was insulting. And Ron Howard, he said at the time, back in 93, 94, uh, he said, I did argue with them, and I said, well, this is for sympathy reasons and all of that, and I left it in no matter what. He says, and I'm kind of upset with myself that I did that because that was disrespectful. And so now all these people think that they argued up there when really all they were trying to do was get home, and they worked together. So, but I appreciate that he actually cleared that up, that he did something wrong by keeping that in and everything, and all that. I think there's two more that I want to talk about, and like I said, I could go on and on. Like Catch Me If You Can. Abagnale said that it would never be accurate, but Steven Spielberg did a good job, and all of that. And but the two that I'll talk about, and then I'll close up here, is The Mummy. Now, when The Mummy came out back in 1999, of course you have these names. They have absolutely nothing. Uh, they have no, like, Imhotep and Seti and Anck-su-namun and even Ardeth Bay. Um, I saw something where Stephen Summers said that he kept the same names that were in the Boris Karloff version. I don't think he knew about the Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee version, Sir Christopher Lee, that was in the 50s. But anyway, before, I'm just going by in my small town, before people really didn't have any interest and they actually were saying, well, he's just trying to be like Indiana Jones, and everything. Well, this movie comes out with Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, and people were just blown away. And there were a lot of people who were actually becoming interested in ancient Egypt. So they were doing research. And of course, I was a junior in high school. And then, of course, as a senior in high school, I would be sitting in the library and people were looking up these names and everything. And I just remember Imhotep was the big problem. He was the biggest problem because, of course, in the movie, you see him as this evil vizier, as this evil bad guy and everything. And people were like, well, that can't be right. And, and, yeah, that's correct. Uh, and I remember telling people that he was beloved. I mean, the Greeks loved him, the Romans loved him, other everyone. When he died, there were people from all different lands coming to pay respects, and the Egyptians wanted to make him a god. And nope, didn't want to believe it because and I also had to say that he wasn't the vizier for Seti. It seems like he was for Khufu or Khafre. I can't remember which one exactly. I never remember who he was actually the vizier for. And then, of course, Anck-su-namun was the wife of King Tut. And so, but the thing about that is that nobody really thought about the name of King Tut's wife. And I knew because I have like tons of books on the subject and everything. And but and of course, historians on the subject would have known and everything, but it wasn't until that movie came out that then people started actually realizing what her name was. So, and realizing that Seti and Imhotep were not in the same, they were separated by thousands of years, and same with and Akhenamun was separated by them by another several thousand years. It's just a monster movie. Yeah, it's a universal monster movie. And when Boris Karloff's came out, of course, that was 10 years after the discovery of King Tut. So I'm sure that what they did was they just plucked random names. Universal just plucked random names that sounded Egyptian and everything. So I'm sure that's what that was. And now the other film that I want to talk about is, of course, Forrest Gump. And the reason for that is because I'm not sure how many people my age would remember, or anybody from that time would remember in general. But when that movie came out, of course, it's revolutionary. The CGI work in it is revolutionary, even now. I mean, it's held up. But the problem is that the movie is completely fictitious. I mean, there isn't anybody named Forrest Gump, that did all the things that this particular individual did. But it's a great movie and everything, and but I clearly remember when this movie came out, and because of all the CGI work surrounding it, there were people that actually believed that there was a Forrest Gump through all of this. And they were asking to see this person. And they're like, did Tom Hanks meet the actual Forrest Gump? And you know, and you get to thinking about it, and you're like, especially the scene at the Capitol building, where they uh he was supposed to be doing a speech, and of course the speakers were shut down and everything, and then he finally says his name. Jenny comes running across everything, and she's in her uh hippie outfit and everything, and he's in his military outfit. Well, anyway, and you would think that with that big scene right there, somebody would remember because it never happened. Never happened. I mean, it's phenomenal uh how the CGI was worked around Tom Hanks and everything. People still love the movie. I still love the movie. I mean, my family and I still quote it and everything, but I clearly remember that people were asking uh if Tom Hanks met the real Forrest Gump. Why can't we see the real? Because he doesn't exist. And especially um when there was the scene. I mean, I could go down the list of all the different scenes, and but there was like the scene with Watergate, and there were people who were actually wanting Watergate to be opened up again because of that whole thing. Well, it had to be because of that. No, it had nothing to do. And of course, back then Nixon was still alive, and so they wanted to get him again. And my grandparents included. Oh man, my grandparents really. Well, anyway, I'm not going to turn this into a political thing, of course, because that's. But people just didn't like Nixon. That's just the bottom line. And oh my goodness gracious me. But there was that. But then, of course, there was also where he ended up in the Olympics because of the or I don't think was it the Olympics or yeah, because he had picked up ping pong and well, it's been long enough. I'm I'm forgetting pieces of it. But yeah, he had gone to the championships. Maybe it was the championships and not the Olympics. And yeah, so it was the championships. You would think that people would remember, yeah, so it's like certain things that it it's most obvious that and but yeah, I just remember the everything that surrounded Forrest Gump and everything. It wasn't a conspiracy or anything, but just the fact that it's something to laugh at over the fact that um people thought that Forrest Gump was real. The CGI is absolutely fantastic and still holds up today. People still love the movie and for good reason. I mean, it was a great story. And but that's and and that was another one where I thought that Forrest Gump was real. But I was in middle school when that movie came out. I was still a dumb kid, so and that's my excuse. So anyway, yeah, um, pretty much with with movies, they are loosely based on actual events. Like this gentleman said, uh, there is fictionalization in movie, no matter what movie you watch, be it the timeline or what have you. And that's Hollywood. If it were 100%, it would be a documentary. So you're gonna have to remember that every time you watch. You just can't accept that what you're watching is 100% true. But we tend to anyway, me included. So so anyway, I'll go ahead and close up here.